We're back. Welcome to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. I'm your humble host, John Dayton. Sitting next to me by the campfire side is your humble co-host, Anthony Kosobucki.
Hey, ladies.
Back off, girls. He's taken.
She doesn't listen. It's okay.
Well, she was here last week.
Her mom listens, though, so we'll see.
So hello to Mom Kosobucki. Hello to all our local listening friends, Paul, Brian. Trying to think who else nearby.
Whoever else that listens, thank you for listening.
Everybody that we know in person who listens, but an even bigger thank you to people we don't know that listen. And that's an ever-growing list, and we're very proud of that and just very welcoming. So I think you'll see if you're listening back to some podcasts and starting to read the blog, which you can find at smart2noise.blogspot.com. Sort of covered everything we had to cover in the first 200 posts, and we were starting to repeat ourselves. So we've been encouraging people to write in. I mean, if it winds up being Dear SNR every day for a while, that's fine.
We're busy for the next couple months, so whatever you guys got is really helpful.
Yeah, still busy. The summer season just ended for me. I'm about to start production on a movie and a bunch of school year stuff at work.
And who knows what I'm up to for the next couple months.
Things are looking slightly...
Could be a movie, could be whatever John's doing and needs help with.
Could be playing guitar down on the corner of Main and Vine.
I've done that.
How's it
pay? It's better than Niagara Falls, though. Playing guitar on the corner of, literally on the corner of the falls is much less desirable than working on something in Hamburg.
So anyway, I'll get this out of the way sooner than later instead of rambling on at the end of the blog, or at the end of the podcast. If you're not reading the blog, please tune in to the address that I just gave you, or if you're watching this on the YouTube feed, pardon the fireworks there in the background.
Yeah, if you just like the fireworks and that's what you're tuning into, we'll hashtag that later.
Yeah, jump in there. We're not hard to find. You can search us out on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Smart2Noise blog on Twitter. We're on Google+, although I pretty much ignore that, same as everybody else, so good luck with that.
I think the Google employees are starting to ignore that, too.
But if you want to, you can even click around on the blog. If you click on my profile there, you can get to an email address where you can drop us a line, and we're very happy to hear from you. Sometimes we'll just, in the case of our friend Michael, who dropped us a line about acoustic guitars. We did a podcast about it. We've been emailing back and forth, going over some ideas with him, and hopefully we'll try and cover some of that tonight, although Anthony's a little behind because he didn't get to read the posts or the emails. And
I'm sure I'll catch up.
We don't get Wi-Fi out at the campfire, so we're winging it. But definitely do write in. While the list is ever-growing of people who read and subscribe and contact us, it's not like you are one in a sea of millions or anything like that. So if you drop us a line, we will definitely respond to you. It may be as quick as just an answer in an email, or we may turn it into a post on the blog.
We'll do as much as we can to catch up with you and figure out your problems and try and sort them out to the best of our ability, at least.
Because that's what we do. And we're also very, if you're a little shy or whatever, we don't have to print your post or reveal your name or anything like that. A couple of our friends in Germany, though, have been so kind as to allow us to reprint their emails and mention them by name on the podcast. And actually, I should mention tonight, we are recording this one on a pair of Shure SM86s in honor of our friend Michael in Germany, who just bought one and loves it.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Yep.
I used to hate everything Shure other than a Beta 52. And John graciously let me steal the mic box out of his truck for a couple months, and I had them, and I really love them. Like, I'll put them against pretty much any not like above entry level, but not high end. Like, they're not Neumanns, but they're damn good for anything that we do, for sure.
They're a mighty fine vocal mic. For a $160 or $180 mic, you have to spend quite a bit more to beat it. I think maybe the ATs that I just tested, the 4100 and the 6100, I forget which is which. One of them comes in about 180, 190. That one would be a close follow-up, although it's a dynamic mic. The condenser was more like a $400 mic. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in the same range as these that really does is nice.
I mean, like the Sennheiser 900 series, like the 935s and 945s, I like a lot.
Yeah, those aren't terribly expensive. I like those too. I have
they top up at $250, I think, or $240 something for the 945, and then $220 for the 935, but I haven't had a chance really to use the AT stuff that you got to use.
Yeah, those are definitely worth a look. AT is kind of overlooked sometimes, I think, but behind the Sennheisers and the Audixes, and Shure's not king of the hill for nothing. They got a lot of product out there, and it's perfectly suitable. That's actually going to come up. Had a response to a forum post about what to put out there for mics, and sometimes the good old SM58. It's not the greatest thing, but it's predictable, and if the bass player, 300-pound bass player in a thrash band, knocks his over and stomps on it, you can still get signal out of it.
It's true, and you can build a stage with it after. Take the stage apart with it.
Yep, you can drive nails with it. It's not so good for removing nails, but if you need to drive a few sinkers.
Multi-tools are very far overlooked. You got a good Leatherman, you got a super tool, or anything like that. You can beat the piss out of a 58 for a while and get it to take out screws.
That would actually be a great topic. They do that every once in a while on the forums. Is they ask, what's in your kit? Like, what do you got in your MacGyver box? What do you have on you at all times? And people will list out all the stuff they carry. So that can be interesting.
Maybe we should get into Batman tool belts at some time.
Think actually has a Batman belt buckle that his wife bought for him because he was
two. I've got two of them. I got the black and yellow one. Then I've got the I think it's brass or copper or whatever, but it's all one color, but it's nice. I love my wife, and I love that she bought that for me, along with a Batman T-shirt to go with it.
All right. Well, we haven't talked about this in a while. This is something we tend to do when we have the larger forum together, the larger panel. But just talk about what we've been doing last couple of weeks, just to give people a little bit better idea of what our background is, what we're doing day to day. Not to brag or anything, because there are certainly bigger dogs than us around. Actually, that was something I wanted to bring up too. If you're new to the podcast or the blog, we're out there to answer questions, but we are by no means the scientist type who write those white paper posts that you read on, I don't know, like Proson Web or something.
We're no Dave or Dave.
Right.
We have fireworks in the background. We didn't have a nice studio to do this in.
We're not writing those articles that start with like 6 words that you can understand and then turned into calculus. And
we could do that.
We don't get into the super esoteric. We're guys on the ground out doing it week to week, and we're not the biggest, we're not the smallest, and we feel like we've achieved some level of mastery of our craft, and we're just ready to share the tricks and stuff that we know, and are still by all means willing to learn from anybody that's willing to teach us. So anyway, last couple of weeks for me, I've been sort of busy at work. I'm the sound and lighting director at a church. I'm actually sort of the technical director there, but I don't want them to know that. I want them to think I'm just the sound guy. Because that's
the same here. I've gotten, actually, right before I went, this week, the week that you're listening, the week before, or maybe 2 weeks before now, I don't know how far ahead we are. I've been on vacation. I've gotten questions, emails, and text messages from various pastors asking what they think we should do with stuff. And we do employ a full-time IT guy, too. Actually, we've got a contract IT guy and then a video IT guy that we employ, and they still ask me all the questions that they shouldn't be asking me because we pay those people lots more money than I get paid. I wonder if that'll come my meeting on Tuesday.
Let us not speak of it. So yeah, I wear a couple different hats at work. We're gearing up to make a movie. We've got our script written. We've got our musical selections picked out. We've got our casted. We've been through a couple read-throughs and got our script finalized. And we're going to do a 4-day shoot, cover some major scenes here coming up in a couple of weeks. And what we do with this, there's a series on the blog. I've already started it, talked about last year's, talked about some of the prep for this year's. Instead of doing a big Christmas pageant, we do a movie. We did the first one last year. It came out great. Shot some scenes around town, and it started with live action on stage. There was a band on one side and actors on another, and then one of the characters leaves, then shows up on the big screen, has some adventures, and then eventually winds up back on stage again, and the whole thing comes to a close. But it's all underscored by a live band. And we did it 2 nights last year. We're going to do it 3 this year, possibly a matinee, and we film all of that, and then we take the best cuts of the live action, prep that real quick, and get it pressed to a DVD. So what did we saw last year? We think better than 3,000 people saw it live, and then we also sold, I think we're close to 500 DVDs now, and then after the DVD sales tapered off, we didn't do it to be stingy with it. We did it to kind of, we're a church, we're spreading the word, so we put it up on Vimeo. In the posts, you can find a link to it if you want to see it. It's a little cheesy. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Hallmark Channel's not going to be sniffing around looking for the rights or anything. And the one guy, I mean, he's He's just funny looking. There's one character, one actor.
I'm not even in it. He's not talking about me.
Talking about myself. I got drafted into gaffing it, recording it, mixing it, pressing it, and I also played 3 parts in it. So if you're wondering what I look like and what I sound like, keep in mind that those characters are just little pieces of me. But anyway, we're getting ready to do that. That's going to be a pretty brutal weekend. But we're going to have a large portion of the movie shot at the end of that. Going back in the past a little bit, I had a couple of busy weeks. Had outside groups come in 2 weeks in a row at church. The first week was for a 2-day youth conference kind of thing that had a live band, and they were sort of a handful, but they were super chill, super nice to work with. Bella Reeve, you heard me talk about them on a couple previous podcasts. So that was a neat learning experience for me, just to see something different and fresh and sink my teeth into it and mix it and work with it. And then this last week, our friends, the brothers McClurg, who I think they're on about the 4th name now, but I've been mixing.
Something like that. Yeah, they've gone from the McClurg family singers to Adelaide to Electromat to Relevant Worship to Brothers McClurg now.
I forgot about Electromats. Yeah, under 5 different headings, I've mixed for one or the other of these brothers and some of the other musicians.
I think all of them, like between both of us,
they're one of my longest.
Covered all of them,
yeah,
for sure.
Anth played in the band for a while and teched and roadied and mixed and
just played with them last week actually, which is one of the nicest experiences I think I've had with them in about 5 years.
So yeah, they're actually one of my longest clients. I've been mixing for them for about a dozen years in different capacities. They've taken me some cool places too. Got to mix on some big stages for them, drive some nice juicy monitor desks. So anyway, they were in. Well, the previous week we had the youth event, and then 2 hours later, actually not 90 minutes later, started rehearsal for a Saturday night service. So that was a challenging weekend. And then this last week, the brothers were in, and they were actually doing the music for our service. But then after the second Sunday service, Gordon, who you've heard on the podcast before, had his system set up outside, and one of our worship teams played out there. And then the brothers went out and played original material for a couple of hours. So that was a fun-packed weekend as well. And then I rested. I didn't do a whole lot at work this week, and I'm not even going to lie about it. I read a lot of Facebook. I read a ton of audio stuff. I had a great book by Bobby Ozinski on mastering that I finally finished.
Which is now sitting on my coffee table that I got to stick my teeth into.
I'll tell you, we talk about some different sources where we've learned some stuff, and I need to get some links up to his stuff, because it's everything the guy writes is gold. And it's funny about his books, like, you'll swear you're reading a chapter from another book, because he does swap chapters in and out. But he's a frequent guest on the Audio Nowcast, which you should also check out. And the books he writes are amazing, and his blogs are amazing. And you should check all that stuff out. Look him up, Bobby Ozinski.
Absolutely.
Bobby O. And what else? I think that's about it, production-wise. Oh, I'm going to Pittsburgh to work with the Water Coolers again. I mentioned them before. It's a musical theatrical group. Going to run down there with Chachi this time and get him a taste of that. I'm actually going to mix that gig on my little Motu interface that I have from work.
Gorgeous. Little
8-in, 8-out deal, and it comes with some software to use it as a mixer, so I'm going to give that a shot.
I think that same weekend I'm picking up your Saturday night, at least.
So yeah,
is that the same weekend?
Yeah, that's a busy week. That's also
I don't know what's going on.
The weekend of the shoot. So yeah, Saturday I'm going to go to Pittsburgh, and Anthony's going to mix my service, and the kid that would have mixed the service is going to go do the sound tech for the video shoot, and then I'm going to drive all night and come back and do another shoot on Sunday, and the kid is then going to mix my services, and Anthony's going to, I don't know.
And I think, well, that Saturday before I mix your set for you at the church, I've got to play at Robbie Takak's Music Festival downtown, the Music is Art Festival in Buffalo, New York, which is Robbie Takak's been the bass player for the Goo Goo Dolls since they started, pretty much, I think.
Yeah, original member.
And he's, he owns GCR Studios in Buffalo, which used to be Tape Master Studios. And just, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, go search on Google GCR Audio. They've got a phenomenal change your pants type live room.
It is a great room.
It's gorgeous. They've got gorgeous equipment. It's one of those things, like, I spent a good deal today digging around the London Bridge studio in Seattle, which is the studio that did when they first started out the Pearl Jam records, the Soundgarden records, Blind Melon records, like all that gorgeous 90s grunge, 16-bit digital. Thank you, Brandon. stuff that all those guys came out with. Most of them did it at London Bridge Studios. They've got a gorgeous, I think it's a Neve 8087 desk or 80 whatever desk. And one of my new favorite bands, Minus the Bear, recorded their whole new album there. And there's, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet, but if you haven't, I'm going to show off the pictures that I saw of just some awesome recording techniques to you later, John, about what they did.
Nice.
Recording that album.
All right, so that's what we've been up to and what we're about to be up to. And let's see. Well, let's get into it. The writings in that have been happening lately, we've been writing back and forth with our friend Michael, who he sparked the what to do about acoustic guitar and vocals in pubs, basically, which he thought might be... I don't know. We might be a little out of his league, but that's definitely perfectly interesting to us,
and definitely within our league. Really, like that's.
Oh yeah, we do stuff like that all the time.
Started, that type of stuff.
Yep, I still do coffee shop gigs once in a while for a friend. When they want stuff to turn out really nice, or actually, I get a gig about once a year. A woman calls me up where she'll have some, like C-list star, like somebody who's done like TV music or something.
The guy from Led Zeppelin, or not Led Zeppelin. I'm sorry. Leonard Skinner, something Van Zant. That guy?
Jimmy?
Yeah, Jimmy Van Zant.
That was definitely not a coffee shop gig.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
that was everything in the kitchen sink.
He could have been a coffee shop gig if his rider wasn't so gratuitous.
Yeah, but no, she had Stuart Starr in last year, so that was like 2 pole speakers and a wedge. But it needed to be of a better quality, so that gig was fun for me to try and figure out. All right, what's the least number and smallest pieces of gear that I can bring and make this sound incredible. And the artist was impressed and comfortable and happy, and the crowd loved it. It was a really nice evening. And actually, Curly, friend of ours, who we hope to get on the podcast soon, he's a sound guy, former touring drummer.
Yeah.
We definitely want to get him on the drum episode, but we need to start getting him on.
If we can even Skype him in if he's got time. I know he's super busy too, but if he's got a spare weekend, or we'll drive out there. I'll figure something out.
Yeah, we'll work it out. Shoot, what were we talking about?
Jimmy Van Zant.
Oh, yeah, anyway, he did a... No, let's not talk about Jimmy Van Zant. Let's never speak of it again, as a matter of fact. One of the worst nights of my life. No, he just did a small gig for them. It was a girl playing acoustic guitar and singing, and honestly, the musical portion of it was probably fine just going out into the air in the room they were in. It was about a 200-year-old meeting house down in Silver Lake in New York. But when she was going to speak in between songs, needed a microphone. I think he wound up mixing the whole thing, like got her on a DI and a nice vocal mic for her, took care of her with just a Presonus and a couple of K12s on poles, and from all reports, it was a magical evening. So small little gigs are, in a way, almost more challenging, because, you don't have
the big giant rig, like, as much as we would love to have a string of K1s on every set. Like, that's not where we're at. Like, we're K12 guys. Like,
yeah,
if we've got K12s, it's
a good
pleasure.
night.
Right. Like we mix on K10s, we mix on whatever. Well, you sold all your stuff, but either way, like we mix smaller stuff, and we got to make it work.
Yep.
And
you mix gigs on Radio Shack equipment from the '80s. You got to make it work
if we have to. There are cigarettes and beer for for dealing with that kind of stuff.
And that's actually one of the points is I was grousing the other day, it was a while ago now, before I got this little Motu interface. At one of these times, we're going to do a podcast about it. I'm going to do a review on the blog once I get into the features of it a little more. But I was grousing about these little gigs, and I went through this when I was mixing on, like I had a big rig, well, not what to me was my big rig, my 10 kilowatts.
Your A rig.
But I would still do these coffee shop things. It was just, a couple of guys in acoustic guitars, maybe 3 people max on stage, and I had a little Mackie powered mixer, and I was like, man, I really just wish I had 2 good channels. And that was when our buddy Kevin Brushert talked me into getting that Joe Meek box that I have.
You have a Joe Meek box?
The Twin Q. Well, actually, Anthony has a Joe Meek box.
Somebody's got it.
He keeps telling me it's the best money he's ever spent on a couple of mic pre's.
Jewish. Go on.
But I got that, so that, the Mackie wasn't great, but it was clean enough and good enough for what we were doing. But I really wanted like some good compression, some good EQ for like the lead vocal and the lead.
Just nice overall channel strip.
Yeah, a couple of nice channel strips. So it was $700, but it made a really nice addition, and it was just one small thing to add to an already small rig that really made it. Well, anyway, I was grousing because, on these little gigs, like, I miss my Midas. Like,
Yeah.
I get to drive a Legend 3000 every day at work, and I want that channel strip when I go out to do stuff. I want fully parametric mids, 2 of them, and separate EQ for the auxes.
And the shelving on Midas is not the same as shelving on a Yamaha Yamaha or a Mackie or a Behringer. It's just,
Oh, you mean it works? Like, you
yeah,
turn the knob and stuff happens.
Same
Yeah.
thing. Like I'd spin the knobs all I want on a Yamaha and maybe get a little more out of my kick drum, but that's about it. Like, everything else is pretty much useless other than readjusting in the drive rack what I've got for feedback suppression.
So yeah, the idea of going towards mixing in the box live, it actually came up in one of the forums I moderate on Reddit, which is reddit.com/r/livesound, all one word. Cool little thread, and it's again, they're under the same ethos that we are. As trolls aren't allowed, flame wars aren't allowed. You can argue as heatedly and strenuously as you like, because that's what we come there for, is to share information.
That's kind of just a Reddit thing. Everybody argues about everything.
Yeah, the flames are kept to a minimum on there. That forum in particular, if it comes to insults at all, the mods tend to crack down on you a little bit, and you can get as heated as you want. You just can't get insulting. So that's a great place to go and hash some stuff out. But
or at least just read up on stuff that we're putting out.
Yep. But
yeah,
yeah,
other people too. Mixing
in the box live is ever more doable and cheap. Theoretical rig. I mean, you wouldn't have to spend $1,000 on this Motu box that I got, but for the small stuff that I do, 6 or 8 channels is really necessary. 6 or 8 actual mic pre's. I'm not talking about these interfaces that call themselves a 22 channel interface.
Right.
And it's,
yeah, but you got to plug 2.
It's only got
in.
Yeah. They only have 2 actual mic ins, and then they have 2 1/4-inch ins, and then you can put in all the ADAT inputs you want.
And the spit-ifs and the
light pipe,
middies ins, stuff like that.
So I got this Motu because it has 8 honest to god mic pre's on it, and phantom power and all that stuff. But even if you're just stringing together cheap $50. Like the ART that we're recording this on, we have a USB dual pre. It's got 2 mic inputs on it, which are XLR or TRS.
They're those universal interface type things.
Yeah, so it's got phantom power in it, and on a PC or a Mac, on a Mac you can just chain up you can plug in as many of those as you want. So if you need 4 channels, you spend $100, you buy 2 of those, off you go. Yep. On a PC, you need to get a little program called ASIO for All, which allows the ASIO audio drivers to address more than one USB device at a time.
Which is pretty much like, it's a different format, but pretty much the same thing as Core Audio for Mac.
Right. The latency is better
right.
than some of the other methods to get into a PC. It's you should be using ASIO anyway, and if you get ASIO for All, it's a little tweaky. You need to learn some stuff. You might need to get into the forums to get it going, but once you do get it going, it works very well.
I've got an RME Fireface 800, which on the computer that I started at work was an ASIO interface, and we ran 2 RME Octomite Ds, and so 16 channels of preamps that we bought separate, ADAT lines into the RME Fireface, and I've got 28 live channels straight in, and then we can mix in ADATs. Like, we can do everything else after, but for a live recording, unless you're doing something crazy big, 28 channels is definitely more than enough. And honestly, even if you buy, I'm a huge fan of the Focusrite stuff.
Yes.
Even the Focusrite, I think it's a 18i6, where you can ADAT in separate preamps. So if you bought, one of the little ART guys that we got, or some other stuff that's got, even the Joe Meek's got an optical out where you can run it in. If you're recording in a small room, if you need kick and then drum sounds, or kick and snare and then drum sounds, and all that kind of stuff, like, you've really got a big advantage, even with just an 8-in, than you do as opposed to just taking direct outs and mixing them into the Alesis HD24s. Like, I've had some great luck with those, and I know John used to own HD24, but with the product that you get out of them, one of the guys that I know mixed, he owns a local studio around Buffalo that Goo Goo Dolls used to record and all that kind of stuff. He's got some gorgeous Neve and Universal Audio and Lawton Audio and SSL channel strips that he'll just, I only want those on one guitar mic and the vocal mics, but a 56 channel recorded desk into those things, or 48 channel desk into 2 of the HD24s, just comes out gorgeous. Like, there's a little bit of work I got to do on some stuff for a conference that I did with two HC24s,
But they are an Alesis product. They're basically
right. Yeah, like
it's just like having ADATs because it doesn't want to wake up and it doesn't want to find the hard drive.
But like the gorgeous thing about those is sometimes they have a problem starting, and that's the problem with the HC24s. But once you get them starting, like you can throw them out of bus, and those suckers just don't stop.
They do, yeah.
As long as they start,
yeah,
they don't stop.
Yeah, but they are only 16-bit, so there's a limit to how much headroom you get.
So it sounds like Soundgarden's a bad motor finger, and that's, in my opinion,
you could
right
do
now
worse.
where I'm at, it's not so bad.
So anyway, back to mixing in the box. You don't even need a fancy computer for a lot of this, and I'll give you two examples. With this Motu box that I've got, all the DSP is in the box, so you could plug it into a netbook, a cheap netbook with no guts at all, and you've got 7-band EQ on every channel. We
did that for a while, didn't we? With your little netbook, and we did not even with this interface, but that little Behringer guy, just even recording left, right. Like it wasn't gorgeous, but it still works. Like you still had what you need to get.
When I used to do that. Speaking of ASIO for all, I had two like $30 Behringer USB interfaces that I'd chain up. They just had RCA inputs on them. I'd put those on the buses of a 4-bus mixer and just take drum group, bass, direct, guitar group, and vocal group, and I'd mix down bar bands. I was like the modern day equivalent of, hey, run me a board tape.
That was pretty much what it was, but it still came out sounding great, even for
what it was,
$100
yeah.
grand total for
way
what
less.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Like,
so the one example is, you get something like the Motu or the Focusrite stuff comes with mixing software, doesn't it? Or does it just come with recording
plugins? It comes
plugins?
with mixing software. Like what I got the little 8i2. So it's got 2 outs, 8 ins. It's got 2 real pre's, and then a stack of TRS inputs, and then it doesn't have the ADAT in, but it's got the MIDI in. But you can mix that gorgeous, and if you're doing it right, if I had one of those, I would be totally happy with drum mixes that I got, as long as they're not giant kits. You get gorgeous kick and snare sounds. You run your actual pre's on the kick in and the snare top, and then after that, just kind of mess around with stuff for a little bit. But either way, like you've got, if you went out and bought Focusrite pre's, like channel strips, for the stuff you got in there, like, you don't have as much flexibility or anything like that, but for just the pre's, you'd be paying close to at least $1,000 for just the 2 channel pre's or the preamps in those suckers. And they really do. Like, I've recorded guitars with them and loaded up SM57 on guitar cabs and a KSM 44 or 609 and a 421 on those things, and you can run them into the red, and the breakup on them is gorgeous. Like, you get a lot of stuff where digital breakup it sounds awful. It really does, all around. Like, you can't really get a good digital breakup. It sounds fuzzy. It clips. You got pops and hisses and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know what's inside it. I haven't had a chance really to dig into it, but for just running 2 guitar mics on a guitar cab, and even just running TRS straight into the preamp, the RME Fireface 800 that I got, it's just got a gorgeous sound. Like the preamp will crack just enough to get this really warm, almost tube-like sound, just a really rich, old-fashioned analog desk sound for something that costs less than $300.
Yep. So with something like the Motu, you've got all the processing, all the DSP is in the box. You can control that with whatever kind of computer you need. Going the super cheap route, you can get a $200 netbook off of eBay, load Reaper on there, which is free to try, and it's pretty much free to try forever.
Forever, right. Like I run Logic 8, Logic 9, whatever the newest version of Logic is, on Pro Tools 10, the student version, which is the full version, but you pay less because you're a student. And I've got Reaper on there, and Reaper will pretty much run everything else that you need. And it's $1,500 cheaper than what I got.
Yeah. So you can get, let's say you're going the netbook route, you load Reaper on there. It's $60 to man up and license up on that, which you should do. Robust program, very well supported. It's open source. It's constantly updated. And then you get 2 El Cheapo de Guapo interfaces The ARTs are great; they're $50, and then you've got 2 acoustic guitars, 2 vocal mics, 2 interfaces that'll fit in your pocket, and a computer that'll almost fit in your pocket. A couple of powered speakers, 1 more for a wedge, and you're done.
Honestly, you fit it in a big international suitcase, like even a medium-sized international suitcase, which is great. Like, if you can track down, I know there's some on eBay right now, which if I had more money, I'd buy them, but the MPA Gold channel strips.
Oh, yeah.
They're super cheap. They're less than $300, even used and stuff. They don't make it anymore, but the MPA Gold channel strips are gorgeous. You can adjust the impedance coming in, the gain. You can adjust the tube plate voltage and all that stuff. They just make everything sound good. And for $300, like, I'm damn hard up to find out. Like, I can use an Avalon and stuff, but for the price differential and what I'm going to make off of it and the programs that I'm doing, the MPA Gold does more than Avalon would for me.
Yep. So, if you are going to wind up coming back, sorry, we're wandering, folks. We haven't been outlining the shows lately. They haven't been going as smooth, maybe, as some of the earlier ones, but bear with us. So, yeah, if you're going the netbook route, I actually, I was going to bring this up because our friend Michael, who is in addition to relying on public transport to get to his gigs, is also blind, so he needs to keep one hand free for the cane.
Right, which I didn't like. I just looked over that on stuff. And Michael, if you're listening, there's an email somewhere probably in your junk box asking you about certain equipment and guitars and all that kind of stuff to figure out how better we can address your personal situation. But
that got me to thinking, like, all right, what if I was an urban dweller and was going to do some little stuff? Like, I'm starting to think about like a camping frame pack. If me and my buddy are going to go play acoustic guitars in a bar somewhere, like, all right, we each carry a microphone, we each carry a powered speaker. Maybe one of us carries an even smaller powered wedge, and then one guy's got the computer, one guy's got the interfaces, and we each carry a few cables. You could easily each get that on your back, guitar in the other hand. That leaves you one hand free to work the turnstile on the subway, and off you go. In fact, if you bought the right stuff or got a little battery pack, you could even do some busking, get out on the street with a nice little PA. So anyway, to return a 7th or 8th time to the idea of you got your netbook, you got your 2 little interfaces, you got a few inputs, and you're mixing in Reaper. It comes with a lot of plugins. There's VST plugins, there's AU plugins, and there's what are called JS plugins, which are actually written in JavaScript. They're little text files that tell the processor how to behave. You can edit them yourself. If you're crafty, you can write your own. So, I mean, it's got to come with close to 100 plugins, and all the Reaper plugins start with re. So there's recomp, req, reverb. The reverb's a little tricky. It's not the greatest, but the compressor and the EQ are great. I mean, they're not world class, but they're good enough. If you know how to use a compressor, you can certainly get the juice out of it. You can make it work real hard. You can make it almost invisible. And your only limitation in that scenario is how much horsepower your little computer has, which it's what makes Reaper a nice choice because it's a very light footprint. Like when I was starting out trying it out, you can actually run the program off a thumb drive and have your files on another thumb drive so that you're actually not even hitting the computer's hard drive. And latency is not that big of a deal. I actually haven't tried mixing live exactly like I've used Reaper for some processing in the theater before, but I haven't actually mixed a whole show on it. And when I say whole show, I mean like 2 guys and their guitars. But the latency, I mean, you're looking at under 10 milliseconds, which in a pub situation, if it makes your life that much easier than dealing with 10 milliseconds of latency through the mains, really shouldn't be that big of a deal. So there's that idea. And let me see. While we were on the subject of Michael, Anthony's off digging up more firewood here, so I'm going to roll on. The last email we got from him had to do with fighting feedback, and I covered a few of these different ideas on the blog. One thing that will trip people up is if you get a supercardioid or hypercardioid mic, or even just a regular cardioid, sometimes on a cardioid mic, sometimes directly off axis isn't as off axis as you think. It's not really a lobe back there, but there's less attenuation than in other locations. So sometimes just moving the monitor a few inches or several inches in one direction, like off to either side, so it's not directly behind the mic, can kill a lot of feedback. And something else is, I've talked before about how like my intern will come along when I'm sound checking my band. I'll be like, man, that guitar sounds really thin. And I'm like, well, you got to wait. It's got to fit in with.
You got to mix it into the band.
Yeah, a bass and a piano and an organ and all this stuff.
If you want to hear the guitar,
right,
as opposed to just you can have a guitar sound like as a guitar player, you have a guitar sounding super ballsy, but if it's not going to come through in the mix, you could have it fill out all the space you want, but it's not going to actually do a whole lot. It's going to sound muddy.
Right. So in the situation that Michael's in, he does want his guitar, in a lot of cases, probably to use up more of the spectrum because it's the only other thing going on besides his voice. But he also has to be careful that, that his voice and the guitar don't fight for the same spectrum. So one of the things we've talked a little bit about surgical EQing to fight feedback, but also shaping EQing. Maybe scoop the guitar out a little bit to make room for the vocals, or vice versa. However it fits his performance style sonically. But anyway, due to his travel constraints, the EQ he picked up is actually a pedal, a parametric pedal. So he's got 4 filters on there, high and a low shelf, and then 2 sweepable mids. And in all honesty, that might be enough. I think he's planning on actually using it on his main outs. One of the things I suggested was, and I do this a fair amount, like I master all the audio for all the video that goes on in our services, and the interns like to put, Owl City or something behind the video announcements, which is great, except all those little beeps and boops that are so interesting behind somebody trying to speak, they completely interfere with all the fricative consonants, all the T's and the S's.
They take away from the overall feel of it. Like they kind of restrain the whatever your lead vocalist or your speaker's trying to say. They kind of distract from.
So those high notes, yeah, they make it so you can't tell. Like, was that a T? Like, I'm trying to come up with a real specific example. But anyway, I'm just going to go on with the process. What I've been doing is, instead of lowering the volume, because by the time you lower a music track enough to hear a voiceover properly, you sort of lose the effectiveness of the music behind it. So what I'll do is I'll just take a high-pass filter, or low-pass filter rather, or a high-shelf EQ, and roll off a bunch. I tend not to use a low-pass filter because I don't want to completely destroy the high end. I want some of it to be there. But, I'll grab the high shelf, roll it down to about 6K, so that everything from 6K up is reduced by, 6 to 12 dB. So the meat of the music is there. All the low notes, the synth pads, the drums and stuff are still bebopping away down low. But then my voiceover artists who are, speaking, and the real meat and potatoes of their vocal performance is probably between 300 hertz and 3,000 hertz. So that's not competing too much with the music track. But the very highest parts, if there's going to be air in the performance, those real nice high clear sounds, you want that to be coming from the vocal and not the music in that scenario. So anyway, what I'm hoping Michael will do is take that EQ and use it either on the vocal or on the guitar, whichever's probably feeding back the worst, and just take a bunch of top off. If he's getting a lot of reflection into a condenser mic or back into the guitar, roll a bunch of bottom off, roll a bunch of top off. There's definitely not much information coming out of a guitar below about 100, unless you're playing a big dreadnought or something. But he can take that completely out and take it completely out of his vocals. Likewise, even though human hearing extends up to 20K, music still sounds pretty good if you roll all the highs off at 10K or 12K, and then you don't have all those super high frequencies bouncing back in. So, I guess we transitioned sort of thoughtlessly into fighting feedback.
Well, that's good. We got an actual topic that we were supposed to cover.
So anyway, that was sort of that topic came up because of something that Michael had written in about, but it kind of applies to a lot of stuff. It doesn't matter if you have 2 inputs or 40. You need to find a place in the mix for each one to exist, and if the sound from front of house is getting back into your monitor system, how you address your mix front of house can definitely very much affect what's going on the wedges. And that applies to, 2,000 seat concert halls and bars that hold 100 people. They're both equally challenging in their own ways. So let me start off, because I don't want to finish with this, but The post we had on the blog, it was end of last week. It was a Dear SNR post on fighting feedback. Took that post and posted it on r/live sound on Reddit, and didn't get a ton of responses back, but the couple that I did get were sort of very well thought out, and I wish I had. I don't think I still have. We don't have Wi-Fi back here, so I can't grab it.
Yeah.
But what the one guy said very quickly was like, look, I'm a small dog in a small club, and I never know what's walking through the door, so if I can't take a vocal mic and stick it directly into a wedge, I may as well go hang myself,
right.
In short.
We've definitely been in those kind of situations at least a few times.
Yep. So he was saying that you can't count on a mic to stay on a stand all night and just being within a certain relationship to a wedge, and I agree with that. I mean, that was sort of where I had gone with that post, but taking you got to think about, yes, people are going to drop their arms and point mics at a wedge. I wouldn't necessarily give a hardcore band a vocal condenser vocal mic anyway.
Oh God, no.
So it's a little bit of a. It's a good thing that was a cheap interface.
Right.
Went in the bit the dust. Let me make sure it's still on. Yep, we're still here. Okay.
Nice.
But anyway, he wound up putting 3 quick points, and I wish I could remember his name. Maybe I'll link to it or something so this guy can get the credit. I'm not even going to be able to remember which 3 things he said. It was basically work out your mic and monitor positions so that they're as favorable as possible to what you're doing, and that's going back to things that I mentioned in the post, like if you have 2 wedges at a position, don't spread them apart because you can wind up with cold filtering at different points on stage where things will disappear or sound hollow or get added together and cause feedback. So maximize your monitor positions, even if your mic isn't going to be perched on a stand all night for some, acoustic guitar playing type. Maximize your gain structure, and then get surgical with the EQ until you can point a vocal mic right at the wedge.
How much is even the cheap DBX stuff, like the 215? Maybe it's less than
less than 150, I think.
Yeah. So even like being gratuitous with it, like $300. If you're going to spend on 2 EQs, maybe one for the mains. Honestly, if you're running a small system in a club, you're not going to be running stereo. If you are, good for you, but for the most part of it, you're going to be running some mono, and that's about where you're going to top out. So you've got a whole other mix for, especially if you're doing just singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar, 1 vocal, maybe a keyboard, maybe another vocal, but you can really notch out, even with just a 15-band EQ, really notch out what's giving you troubles.
Yep. So yeah, if you've got a small system, I don't know why you wouldn't have EQ. It seems like top of the list. But if your system didn't have EQ in it, the minimum you would ever see, anything less is just sort of laughable for like a club sound system. You got to see a dual 31 band on the main mix and at least 1 channel of 15 band EQ per monitor mix, and the 15s are all right, but they tend to be a little broad-handed. You can get so you chop stuff out, so it sounds really sort of thin and puny on stage. But if it doesn't feed back, that's the trade-off. And people would much rather listen to monitors that sound a little funky than listen to feedback all night.
Yep, and even mains, like for small stuff like that, a 15 band will be suitable at least enough. Like you're not going to be
you hear some grousing.
Right? Yeah, somebody is obviously going to complain because someone definitely 100% knows better than you what you're doing, even though you're doing it for a living and all that kind of garbage. But at the same time, they're not complaining about feedback. They're complaining about not hearing all the beef in something, as opposed to their ears being bled out by some nasty 6.3K.
Yep. So, but it's more than just people seem to think that minimizing feedback in monitors, has everything to do with knowing your frequencies or being able to read an RTA and getting surgical with a 31 band EQ. It's so much deeper than that, especially if you're going to use an RTA. With the technology that's out there, you can get a 31 band RTA on your phone nowadays. That's actually, it's a toy, but it's fairly useful. I pull mine out.
Yeah, we've definitely, like at Ellicottville, we used our phones to EQ stuff, and it wasn't 100% dead on, but at least we could figure out, like, okay, well, 225 is being
ish
really awful here.
Yep.
So if we parametric that out just a touch and then work on everything else. We'll figure it out.
And that's what he said, is it's not 100%. I mean, if you're really going to use an RTA, what you need is one with about 4 times the resolution of the EQ that you're going to use. So if your EQ is a 1/3 octave, you need to be looking at a 1/12 octave RTA, and that's so that you can know if the feedback that's occurring is right on the center of a filter, slightly off center, right in between 2 filters, or just what. And that's so that you can EQ as little as possible, because ultimately the goal is monitors that are loud and don't feed back, but that also sound natural. So
right. And that like the whole like the smiley face thing or the frowny face thing is not it's not unwarranted. Like you're gonna get in situations where maybe you need to start dipping down at 180 and then come back up and have it flat by 400.
Yep. But I don't have any preconceived notions about what my graphs ought to look like. I mean, theoretically they'd be flat, but also theoretically we'd have biamped wedges everywhere.
and we wouldn't. Right. Yeah.
Yep. But My practice has always been, even back in the days when I didn't have an RTA and all I had was 15 band EQs for my wedges. I'd get on stage, I'd start calling out frequencies. Take this out, take that out more. Get it all as bulletproof as I can. I mean, to the point where you can scream into it and the red lights are starting to come on in the amps and you're still not getting feedback.
Right.
But then at the end, I mean, once you've gone to that ridiculous level, I'll back off just a hair, take a little bit of gain back out of it. And then usually it's a matter of sort of warming things up a little bit.
In the wedges, at least. Like, you've got to, because as much as you sound check, as a sound guy or engineer, whatever you're calling yourself, your singer is going to sound different than you, unless you are the singer. So maybe they've got a little bit less 180 in their vocal range, or maybe they've got a little more 6.3 or 8K in their vocal range. Like, you've got to adjust for that. Like,
and that's why sound checks sound... A really good mic check on stage will sound kind of odd, because we'll try and do all those things with our voices that singers are going to do. So the words check 1, 2 actually work out pretty good, because you got some hard consonants at the beginning of words. You got the ooh,
checkers and chess,
and then you've got the final consonant on there for some sibilants. Guys will say sibilants as a test word. Carl's a great example. I actually learned a lot about how to check a mic just from watching him. So we go check 1, 2, 1, 2, and then reverse it 1, 2, 1, 2, and then like do sort of a gliss. You're like ooh, ooh, like just
like if you've got the time and you've got the extra energy to do it, like there are some great like honestly just straight up vocal exercises where vocalists will go ooh. Try and do that. See if you can do that. If you can't, then you can't. But either way, like if you've got the ability or the know-how to try and at least cover the biggest range of what they're going to do, you're going to give yourself at least a big head start on your mixes.
I'm not going to do it now because I don't want the neighbors to pull their curtains back and see. But you'll catch me on stage just doing every obnoxious thing I can think of, like shouting, like yeah. Go out in front of the mains and shout in the mic, cup the mic, yeah.
Just John raps.
I've been known to do that, and I'll go all Bruce Dickinson on you too. Like, yeah, get the high scream in there. Just trying to force the system into feedback. So then by the time you get into whatever it is you're doing that night, chances are it's already been done to the system. You don't have to scramble around like, oh, sorry, I'll find that feedback. Another thing to consider too, though, is in-ear monitors are great. Despite being somewhat of a challenge, you have to be a little more careful mixing because the knobs are connected directly to somebody's inner ear.
Yep.
But if you're sitting on a bar stool playing acoustic guitar and singing in a bar, and you're already getting some feedback issues from the mains, but you can't hear yourself, so now you got to throw a wedge into the mix. Get a little headphone amp, because really, where are you going?
like grand total, even if you do it cheap, like I've got crappy, like they came with my Shure PSM 200 wireless headphone amp, like $150 American is what it's going to set you back for a little headphone amp, and driving a line out of your tape outs or your aux outs into a headphone amp, boosting it up so you can hear yourself. I know Joey is a big opponent of leaving one ear out, but I'm a big proponent of leaving one ear out, especially in stuff like that. Like if it's just you,
right?
Leave one ear in so if you can't hear your guitar, boost your guitar up, and like the compression within your eardrum is gonna allow for you to know what you're singing if you know what you're singing. If you don't, then
Well, and without a really good ambient mic or mics, it's hard to know how your stuff's playing in the room, and you miss
Right.
that connection with the crowd. So if you're listening to the sort of the house mix coming back to you with one ear and your close mix in the other ear, it's not your brain can sort that out. Another cheapo way to go about it is get one of these little $89 1 or 2 channel mixers and buy a couple of Y split cables. So, if you walk into if you're a guy playing acoustic guitar and singing in a club that's got 15-inch wedges out there, you don't need them. Tell the guy, shut them off. I'll handle my own monitors. Plug his mic into your Y split. Give him the other split. Plug it into your mix. Plug your guitar into a split. Give him one. You take the other and just dial them up on your little mixer. Put it on a holder on your mic stand, and you can just mix your own monitors. There's no stage volume to worry about, and the house guy still has full control over your mix independently. And that's important, because I've had some people that have been burned by sound guys, and they're like, no, I'll handle it all. We'll send you the 2 mix, which is a shame, because I'm a conscientious sound guy, and if the vocal balance isn't right or the music balance isn't right, there's only so much I can do with EQ and compression. It's like trying to master something on the fly when I get an artist like that.
Like one of my favorite groups of people in the entire universe is gone. Like they do stuff at Walter Reed and Bethesda Hospital, which is the United States. I don't know if it's Air Force Hospital or an Army hospital, but all of the wounded soldiers that come back from Afghanistan or Iraq or anywhere else, they go to Walter Reed. That's the hospital. And what they do a lot of times is, these guys that I know, they'll show up and they've got their show pretty mixed down. Like they go into a studio, they get all the tracks done, and all they've got live is key parts, percussion, and bass guitar. Because the singer plays bass guitar, even though he's actually a fairly credited studio drummer, which is amazing to me. But either way, they'll send you a 2 mix, and I've had that happen a bunch of times with me. And recently, probably about 3 months ago, they'll send me a 2 mix, and that's fine and everything. And halfway through the set, the guy will look at me like, hey, Slash, come up here and EQ my mic for me. So, on the crappy, whatever, Mackie something or other, because they're endorsed by Mackie and Ultimate and Shure and Diodari and all that stuff, come and EQ my vocal for me. So, in the middle of a set, while they're speaking or singing or whatever, he'll call me up and I'll just have to kind of notch stuff out. So if you can avoid that kind of stuff before the game starts, then that saves you a hell of a lot of headache. Shout out to GTM Ministries too, for everything they do for the troops coming back and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I just took a look at the time. We're actually closing in on an hour. I don't know if we rambled on anything coherent in there. We tend to diverge a little bit. But anyway, this is what we're all about.
It's at least better than last week, where it just kind of fizzled at the end.
I think the idea is to sort of just to get people thinking in sort of different directions, other than to make monitors work, you just need to be good with a graphic EQ. You need to be thinking of it. It's a system. It's not called a system for nothing. What's done in front of house affects the monitors. What's done in the monitors affects front of house. Reflections, reverberations, oscillations, all that stuff, room modes. These things are all going to affect the performance, the monitor mix, and there's just a million things you can do. Changing mics, changing positions. The list goes on and on. And we didn't want to sit here. I mean, we could tell you step by step how to go through and ring out monitors. But that's already been covered in depth on the net in places.
And really, if this is the kind of place you're looking for that kind of stuff, we're going to tell you the same thing. Like, we can give you some starting points, but it's not going to be exact. Well, we can I can tell you that I'm going to go into a room and cut out certain frequencies every single time and then work from there. But maybe that doesn't work in your room. It doesn't work with your band. It doesn't work with the people you're working with. You got to essentially start as flat as you can.
Yep. Yeah, they're really there are some rules, but they're only the rules until it's time to break them. Like Anthony said, sometimes you're always going to take out the same frequencies. To me, that says, all right, that's your mics. Those are the things that are going to be constant room to room to room. It's the way your mics act. Like, no matter what, they're going to pick up some reflection and cause some high-end feedback.
Like the brothers, we go in, whoever has worked with them for long enough knows that you're cutting out at least 3 dB on 180. before they even get in the room. Like that's almost
they have low voices and they sing really close to the mic, so you can count on that. But then what other frequencies are going to be issues depends on the size of the room. Like, where is that low-end feedback going to come back because it's resonating out under the balcony and coming back to you? Where's that high feedback going to come from? You know, slapping off a ceiling or a wall or something coming back to you. Those are the things where you can't have a preconceived notion and say, oh, well, you know, this system's always going to feed back at 2.5K. Well, it might, but if you throw a different mic on there, it might suddenly not do that at 2.5K, but do it at 4K.
Right. Yeah.
Or it might do it at 4K in some rooms, but not in others. So I've said it before. Like I had the same system for 15 years, but I set it up different almost every night. So you sort of, it's never set it and forget it. When digital consoles, like the little Yamahas first hit the market, guys were saying, a couple of guys owned them, and other guys wanted them. It's like, oh, this is great. You could have, you know, and these were sound guys that sort of always worked for the same band. Like the band owned the stuff, and they always mixed for them. Right. Like, oh, we got our stumbling in setting, and we got our this setting, and that bar setting, and this outdoor setting, and that's it. We're done. Like, well,
what if it's warm outside?
Yeah, what if it's hot and humid? And like, to me, I'd need like a hot humid setting, and a full hot humid setting, and an empty hot humid setting, and a setting for if the crowd's
middle of the winter.
Yeah, really drunk and talking a lot. Oh, I'm still on summer. I mean, and then like those nights where it starts hot and humid in September, and then it's 20 degrees colder by the middle of the night, and
you can't just leave it. Like maybe the monitors will be a little bit more stable, but overall, like if you got a 31 band to throw in the house, maybe it's going to change. Like even in the house that I live in, like it'll be nice and chilly downstairs, and upstairs it's a hot, humid mess. And we'll leave the air conditioner on for 2 hours and then shut it off at 3 in the morning because it gets cold enough outside where the air conditioner's not doing really anything.
Yep, and that's peculiar. We're particularly sensitive to that in our area because you can easily have the temperature swing 30 degrees on you from the start of the night to the end of the night and have the humidity take a similar dive.
Yeah, it's Buffalo.
But same thing. I mean, even in a controlled environment, an empty room, even if the HVAC is doing a really good job in keeping the temperature and humidity fairly constant, 1,000 people walk into a room and they're all wearing clothes, that's going to soak some stuff up and cause things to act differently. So it's
that's the same thing I deal with every week, and I'm sure you do too. Like we'll sound check a band and it'll sound great, but you got to remember that you're mixing to an empty room, not a room full of 1,000 or 2,000 people that are going to soak up all of that high end.
Well, and bands play differently too.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. I know I play differently in front of 1,000 people as I do in front of 10,000 people or 100 people. It's just you play different.
It's a different vibe. So said all that to say that nothing's for sure. So you got to always keep your mind open, always be thinking of different ways, and as worn out and tired a statement as it is, think outside the box. Like if wedges aren't working, figure out a way to do IEMs cheap, or save up and do it. Maybe do without some stuff. Skimp on beer money for a couple of months until you can afford something that's going to work better for you.
Yeah, even Joey has said I think they're less than $100. Carvin IEMs, they're single driver. I think they're definitely less than $100 or right around $100 a piece. But go out and buy 2 or 3 sets of those, 4 sets of those. And then just buy a crap load of the actual ear molds, or the universal ear molds. And
that's a great solution. Get a cheap IEM transmitter and receiver, but buy better earbuds for it. That's a great way to go.
Even if they're wired, if you got to run it out line level from the returns on your snake, run it into a pack and run into their ears, and you've got the same type of mixing, but you don't have the overall volume control that you would mixing from wireless, I guess.
Yep, and that's one of the major things to overcome. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can do stuff on the cheap, but that's the biggest thing that causes flames in forums is guys will come in like, well, I want to go from this way of doing things poorly to this way of doing things better, and all the guys who know say, oh, well, that's going to cost you $8,000 or $30,000 or $1,000 or whatever the solution is to really do it right. And maybe if
it's always more than what you have.
Yeah, and maybe if the right solution is $1,000, and maybe if you skimp or find something used or do DIY it, you can get it down to $800. But the guy only has 150.
Right.
So then you think outside the box. Maybe you can contrive some sort of situation. But you have to realize, I mean, you get what you pay for, and sometimes you got to save up if you want to do it right. Or, which is why my motto is, buy your second one first. Like if you really want to go to IEMs, if you can if you can borrow a Carvin one and try it out and it works for what you do, I gotta say I've seen singers and rock bands use them and they don't.
Joey used it on Letterman, and he was totally okay. Like Letterman.
Yeah, but Joey's a real engineer. I mean,
right. But even coming from that standpoint, like if a guy of his caliber can do it on a pair of single driver ears that cost less than $100 on a nationally televised TV show, with they were doing pretty. I mean, they had some processing on it and stuff, but still, if he can do it for that, if you're doing one acoustic guitar, if you're doing less than a 10-piece band. Like, you can figure out a way to make it work.
But then again, I've seen them not work in situations with a 4-piece band. So,
right. Yeah, that's true.
If the real solution is going to be, like, buy the actual unit, save up and get a Shure or a Sennheiser or something that can really do the job, if it's, cheapo solution is $400, good solution is $800, don't spend $400 and then spend $800. If what you really need is the $800 solution, buy the second one first. Do without, tough it out, skimp on some other stuff, collect cans by the side of the freeway or something, and just realize that sometimes it's nice. I mean, you hear these big dogs talking about, oh yeah, we bought one of these and tried it, and bought one of that and tried it, and any one of them would break the bank for little dogs like us.
Right. And they're all endorsed by those companies, so they didn't really buy it.
But the good news is, there's ways. You might be able to do all your research by reading reviews, by talking to other musicians, by emailing people, by reading forums. You might be able to find out that $400 solution isn't going to work, and what you're really going to need is to keep doing what you're doing until you can afford the right solution for $800 or $1,000. Well, anyway, I think we've rambled on enough. This is going to be we're going to put this one in the box, and let me see. I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, but our friend Ika has some server space over in on the other side of the pond there. So he has graciously offered that to the podcast. So
wonderful.
Yeah, no, I haven't had time. It's been too busy for me, and I should do it quick because it's about to get busier. But what we're thinking about doing is just mirroring some of the podcasts over there. Probably just the MP3 files, since YouTube manages things pretty well. I'm pretty sure you can stream this if you're looking at the YouTube version. Their servers and the networks and everything handle that all right. But if you're just trying to stream the MP3 or download the MP3, if we have those up on a server in Europe, then that might work out a little better for some people in other parts of the world. So anyway, that'll be coming up. And I don't know, you got any wrap up thoughts?
Not really.
All right.
Before wasting another half an hour.
All right, so think outside of the box. Don't be afraid to cobble those solutions together, but be smart about it. Think it out. Don't just hack something together. Practice your craft. Get good at learning those frequencies. Get good with an EQ. Understand EQs. Understand that there are different.
There's some YouTube videos actually with frequency training type stuff where you can listen to a stream of different frequencies, and you'll figure out what stuff is. They'll give you 2 minutes of one frequency and work all the way through stuff. So it's definitely time consuming. But if you really want to get good at it, and you don't have a group that you can do that with personally, then spend a couple hours every week or so.
Your training is great. Your training is good stuff. But I will say that some people are predisposed to. Some people have what's called the tin ear, and they just can't differentiate those frequencies.
Everything at 8K sounds good.
So don't lose heart. It can't. If you have any kind of ability to hear tone, you can definitely develop that. You just may not be able to develop it as well as some other people. So keep after it if you are learning that stuff. The other thing too, which got mentioned in the email, was Michael had one disastrous encounter with a feedback removal machine, and so have I, and I think so has everybody else that's ever used one. So don't buy the hype, don't buy the units, don't let a machine do your thinking for you, because it just never works out. Those things will.
You have 2 ears for a reason.
Yeah,
God wants you, whatever God
and some stuff. Some stuff in between those ears. And if a box is thinking and solving your feedback issues for you, it might do it. But maybe to the detriment of the sonic quality of the performance. And maybe it'll do things like, maybe it's really good at catching feedback, but maybe it's also really good at catching like the flute or a guitar solo, and chopping that out of the performance for you for the night.
Jethro Tull be screwed.
And I had that happen with that was the first piece of gear I ever sold. I was a miser with gear. If I got something, I wasn't giving it up for nothing. But I bought a Behringer feedback destroyer. I used it for 4 gigs, and I sold it on eBay as new.
Yeah. Well, might as well.
Yeah. So, there's all of that. This has been the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast with your humble host, John Dayton, co-host Anthony Kosobucki, camping out by the campfire on quite possibly what is one of the last favorable summer nights. So you may hear us...
inside from now.
Yeah, there may be less sounds of crickets and fireworks and karaoke parties in the background coming up.
Somewhere, I'm sure.
Although I did take a pretty good recording of crickets, so I may just fly that in behind all the podcasts because I don't know. I feel like it kind of sets us apart from the crowd, gives us that woodsy feel that's maybe lacking on other tech podcasts.
Everybody else is in a studio that costs more than anything I'll make my entire life.
Talking on mics that are worth more than my whole rig, possibly.
Let's sell kidneys for what they got. I've only got one left, too.
And we're doing it again. We're just
let's
rambling.
wrap that up.
All right, yeah, we came in at a respectable length. We're not going to break the server this week. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for writing in, those of you who have. Those of you who haven't, get busy. Put your questions to us. We're more than happy to have them. We will not make fun of you, and we will not let anybody else make fun of you. We are your big brother on the audio playground. And with that, we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming by.